Hey everybody, can you hear me? Thumbs up or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just walked over there.
I knew that I walked over to do it, but I could not actually recall.
Remember the times when I'm home and I walk downstairs and I forget to do what I came downstairs to do?
See what I meant to do. Oh, okay, that'll, all right, good,
Okay.
good call, thanks. Thank you for letting us know. It's not a code. Yes. Unless there's an event. An event is called working. Yes, unless it's called working, yes. We want to support your emotional development, except if it was not what it is. So you're already up to slide. Did I unmute myself before I did all that? Did I do that? Free?
I think you're muted
I
on.
think I muted it.
I think
Caitlin, can you hear me? Can you unmute yourself and say if you can?
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right, thanks. Sorry. This is one of these things where I forget, and we are recording already.
We are
Okay,
recording.
okay.
Yes, so keep it appropriate.
Yeah. Thank you for the reminder. I appreciate that. I know I need it. Is there? Could be someone, just like if there was like a little slider, but I'll just use this. Otherwise, I'm like, I feel like I'm hidden, so. Oh, there's. Hey, come on. So, thanks everybody for being here. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet because I missed all of last term's seminars because I had class scheduled during this time. My name is Briana Mezuk and I'm the director of CSEP. So it's wonderful to see you all, or we see you all. Please help yourself to lunch and then just sign in. There's a little sheet that at some point before you leave, sign in. So maybe I'll put this right here and so folks grab something. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In terms of announcements, Abby. Oh, yes. Please, hopefully you've seen a flyer from Abby about this home lab training that we are having. It's can't remember one.
It's in February.
I'm sorry.
It's in the 12th.
Thank you. It's in February. So I don't, how many of you are familiar with home lab or? So home lab is an apartment in the basement of IFR that is fully censored out. Like it is got like cameras everywhere, audio recording, and it's got like a back room where you can walk, you see in, and it's an incredible place that you could like do like what would it be like if you were in somebody's apartment, like do, you know, very like a home research setting. And we are using this for and we're using what we've designed with home lab is a hands-on data collection training experience. So this is going to be really cool. Like you're going to get to see them, and it's going to be around human-centered design. So if you're able to make it, please do, because we have to assign you, it's kind of like you'll be assigned a role. Like, so there's a specific role that you'll have, either researcher or participant. Like it's really going to be immersive and hands-on. There's only 12 spots available for this very reason. So if you're, and we also need you there for the whole time. So I understand that may be a very limiting step, but if you're available, I encourage you to do it. The second announcement is our space. You probably have noticed we have some new furniture. So and we are, part is open for business. Please enjoy, you know, our new kitchen seating area. The backspace is also done, but we cannot be in it yet because the state has not said it's available. So as soon as it is available, we will let you know, and we'll sort of start the process of moving people there. But if you want to see it, just ask me or Abby. We can go and show you. It's really, those of you who probably don't know what it used to look like before, but it's really nice now. And so it'll be a nice kind of bay area. It's got a nice window and it's gonna be nice. Any other announcements there?
I think that's it for today.
Okay, so without further ado, I'm excited to I wanted to give this talk in the fall, but obviously I couldn't for the reasons I told you earlier. But I wanted to take today to not give a research talk, but really sort of reflect more on, as the beginning of the new year, like sort of the dealing with the inevitable, the challenges that you're going to have in your career. And I'm hoping that I'll have plenty of time for questions. I always say that, and it's chatty, as you know, but we'll see how I go. So the three things I want to talk about today, I want to tell you my shadow CV, sort of what that means. I'll define that term. I'll tell you about hope, and then we'll end hopefully with questions. So, but the first thing I would like you to do is think about how long ago was your most recent professional life rejection? And if you'd like to share, you don't have to share what the rejection was. You can share how long ago it was. Yeah, and
It's like a rejection every single day.
every day. So today, last 24 hours.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Other folks? Is
I
that
think mine was like maybe 2 months ago that my paper was rejected for the fourth time.
yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. How long ago? What was it? Yeah, fair.
Like December.
Yeah. If you're having trouble thinking of one, or if maybe it was a long time ago, I'm going to suggest that you're at the early stage of your career because you're not necessarily doing that many things, because rejection is the nature of academic life. This, for every one acceptance you're going to have at the beginning of the career in particular, I would say probably 10 rejections to get to one. You know, think about, like, I don't like sports, but like in baseball, right? People say like a good batting average is like 300 is like an incredible batting average. And what that means is that 3 out of every 10 times at bat, somebody gets on base or maybe gets a hit. I don't know, because I don't know nothing like that. But the point is like, it never, like nobody has a batting average above 0.5. Like it's unheard of. And yet, like, so again, like if you think about like getting up at that is like a form of rejection, you know, being the vast majority of players don't get a hit or whatever, whenever they go up. So the first thing I just want to emphasize that everyone has rejections, and they are going to happen far more frequently than anything exciting is going to happen in your career. That's the first thing. So given that, how do you get through this? How do you make it in a job that is defined by rejection? And so I'm going to tell you my story, and then hopefully have time for a question. So, and then I'll share these slides out in the Slack channel. I'm going to tell you about my shadow CV. There's more about shadow CVs, which is being in the concept of if you think about a CV, all you're seeing is the numerator. You don't see the denominator. You only see the papers that were accepted and published. You don't see the papers that were rejected and never found a home. You only see the grants that were funded. You never see the grants that were not funded. I love New Yorker cartoons, so you're going to see several of those. So my CV in terms of titles, I got some nice ones. So I'm an associate chair of this department. I'm an associate professor. I direct this center. I'm the director of the Michigan Integrative Wellbeing and Inequality Training Program. This is a NIH funded training program that started a few years ago. I have some other titles too that are not on my CV. So I'm a mom. I have a 10-year-old son. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm a wife. In 2016, I survived colon cancer. I don't like to use the word survivor, but like this I don't know how else to describe it here. I have experience with colon cancer. And previously, I had been an assistant professor at Virginia Commonwealth University, which is in Richmond, Virginia. That was literally my dream job. Like this, on paper, there was absolutely, I could not have asked for a better job. The only thing I had wished, I guess, it would have been that I didn't know anybody in Richmond, Virginia, so it would have been nice to not have to like pick up my family and move to a place where I didn't know anybody. But in general, I did really enjoy being there, at least for the first few years. And I'll talk about the transitions in that job in a little bit. And then I came to Michigan in 2016. You'll notice that's the same year that I had cancer. And in fact, 2 weeks after I accepted the job here, I was diagnosed with cancer. So that was a really conflation of personal and professional sort of challenges. And what really helped me get through that transition, frankly, were the people here. So when I was diagnosed, a couple days before I had my first surgery, which is we didn't quite know how bad it was going to be at that time. I met with Joe Eisenberg, who at the time was chair of this department, and I told him what was going on. I was supposed to start this job in January 2017, and this was now in September 2016. And I said, look, if my initial diagnosis was stage 3C cancer. There is no stage 3D, it's 4 after that, which just means the cancer has spread to other parts of your body. But my surgeon said she didn't think it was going to be this bad. And so we needed to go do a very extensive surgery, and we'll see how things turn out. But, there were other blood work and other sort of scans that indicated it potentially was not going to be as bad as the initial diagnosis said. So I had to go tell Joe Eisenberg, the person who had just hired me and I was supposed to start in January, what was going on, and basically say, like, I cannot, if I need chemotherapy and radiation, which I don't know if I'm going to, I cannot start this job in January. And I was very concerned about, this had been a really difficult, not difficult personally, but like difficult negotiation about different types of things. And my brother-in-law works for the EEOC, and he said, the word you need to keep using is reasonable accommodations, reasonable accommodations. And so that's what I was like, I need reasonable accommodations. And he was fantastic. And he said, look, why don't, you let me know what's going on after you have the surgery. And if we had the surgery, it turns out my cancer had not spread. It was on stage 1. I did not need radiation or chemotherapy, which is incredible. I did have to have additional surgery in January, right when I started. And of course, I had no sick leave or anything like that built up. And what Joe said, he said, tell me, he's like, most people, when they start at a new job, they've got a lot of things they got to transfer and stuff. Why don't you tell me you're working from home for the first time? And I said, Joe, I'm going to be working from home for the first time. And that was it. Like, I came here for 3 days. I think it was January 5th or something. I had my surgery, and then I disappeared from my first 3 months of the job. I don't know how that affected my relationship with folks in the department, because I didn't really disclose to most people what had happened or where I was. I just didn't show up to things, because I was certainly still in the process of adjusting for that as myself, and then what it meant in a new job. But this place really helped me be able to recover in a meaningful way. So I'm very grateful for that. Okay, so other things that are on my CV. So training, all right. So I have a lot of fancy letters after my name. I have a BS in neuroscience. I have a Bachelor of Philosophy and History and Philosophy of Science, both from the University of Pittsburgh. I have a PhD from the Department of Mental Health at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, and I was a fellow with the Robert Wood Johnson Health and Studies Scholars Program here at the University of Michigan. All really fancy things. What are not on my CV, my shadow CV, is that I'm the first person in my family to go to a 4-year college. My mother and father both have associate's degree. My dad got his associate's degree while I was getting my bachelor's degree. So we really I had no idea what was sort of going on, certainly not in graduate school. In order to get this B.Phil, I had to do a public defense of my thesis work, which I literally did not know what that meant. So I showed up to a meeting with my committee and looked at them, and they looked at me and they're like, "We're prepared for your defense." And I said, "Well, yeah, you read it." Like literally, I had nothing prepared. I did not know that I thought it was just like they were going to ask me questions. And it was, after like 10 minutes when it's apparent that like, I don't know what's going on because I don't know what this word defense means. They send me out in the hallway for 2 hours to like discuss what the hell they're going to do, because this, like, I'm either going to get this degree or I'm not based on, and part of this is like, I'm so grateful for that experience, because the reason I didn't know what that word was is because I never asked. And I never asked because I have a very much a self-reliant idea, and I almost had a perverse disdain for asking questions. I'm like, I will figure it out on my own. Thank you very much. I don't need to raise my hand. I will spend hours by myself figuring this out. I don't need your help. And I thought that was a sign of strength. And actually that's a recipe for disaster in the academy. You must ask questions. And so I'm so grateful for this negative experience, because it made it so I can ask questions. I'm like, let me explain, let me understand fully what you're asking of me. Let me understand fully what you need from me, when you need it by, etc. And then I can do my best work, because I do the part of why. Anyway, so that was thankful. I was very thankful for that in hindsight. So I have a degree from a very fancy place. What you don't know is I applied to 10 programs for a PhD. I got into one. Those 9 other programs were in philosophy of science. I thought I wanted to study like what makes human beings, what is the human condition. I'm thankful to not be an unemployed philosopher currently, but the point is that it wasn't like I had tons of places to choose from. My husband had applied to 10 programs. He got into every one of them. So we ended up in Maryland because it was the only place that like we both had matched to, and so, but the point is, again, you don't know that if you're just looking at where I got my degree from. When I got to Hopkins, I hated it. It was a really competitive place. Most of the people in my program, if not everyone else, already had an MPH. I did not. I came straight out of undergrad. They got that MPH from Harvard or Hopkins or Michigan or Columbia. I again came from the University of Pittsburgh, where I still remember telling someone where I went to school, and they said, "Oh, you went to Carnegie Mellon?" I said, "No, I went to the University of Pittsburgh." And they said, "Oh, I hear they have a good basketball team." And I said, "Yeah, but coach says I'm not going to make it, so I'm here." Because there was no and I hated it. It was really competitive, but more than the competitive nature of it, I came to graduate school to think about hard problems. And the first year, I think of the PhD program there, and probably the first year of your master's training, if you're a master's student, is just ingesting from like a fire hose. And it's like swallow, regurgitate repeatedly. And I was like, that's not why I'm here. I came here to think about hard problems. And I feel like I'm just taking test after test after test. And Hopkins is on an 8-week term, so you take 4 quarters. So imagine that like this you'd be in basically a quarter of the way done already with your first winter term. So so what happened is I was ready to leave. I was getting ready to leave. I was just miserable. And so my boss, who is Bill Eaton, who at the time was the chair of the department and was the PI of the epidemiologic catchment area study, which is sort of a cohort study of mental disorder that's been followed since 1980. And I've been working as a research assistant on this project. So he asked to meet with me, and I said, okay, well, I'll meet with him, and then I'll tell him that he'll tell me what he's going to say, and then I'll tell him that I'm going to leave, that I want to kind of figure out, can I get a master's degree or something out of this, because it's been miserable. And at that meeting is when he asked me to take a leave of absence to be the project coordinator for the ECA study, to actually run field work for this large cohort that was now going to be interviewed for the 25th year. And so I never told him what I was thinking but had I, you know what I mean? I think about that point so many times when it was just like, what a random occurrence, and like have just the notion that And maybe he knew in some way that sort of I needed something different. It's like, I don't, you know, I was doing okay in classes. That wasn't the issue. It was more of like, I just didn't care about what I was learning. So, but that changed my life. Like that changed everything because, not only did it change what I was interested in, it gave me an understanding as to why all the stuff I was being asked to memorize in classes mattered. It helped me apply it in a meaningful way. And again, because I had come straight out of undergrad, I really didn't have any real research experience. My jobs before becoming a professor, my job before this was a postdoc. My job before that was a project coordinator. My job before that was temping at a hospital. My job before that was Kmart. My job before that was McDonald's. That is my job. That is it. Okay. And then finally, I think it's important to comment on the things that I was helped with. So right before the year I was applying to the Robert Johnson program, Tamara Mendelson had just been hired at Hopkins and she had just come out of this program. So I went to her bravely and to my mind, I said, can you read my application? And I'd never asked anybody to read anything like that before, but she knew exactly what they were looking for. And I said, but the fact that I was able to take advantage of that again, is a testament to, I mean, sometimes we think that like all of our wins are our own, and like our wins are not all our own. Our wins are a result of our context. And in the same way, my losses are not all my own, but they're a result of, or they're influenced by context. Okay, so that's my training. Let me tell you again about, so other parts about your CV, or so part of my job as a professor is to obtain NIH funding or become externally funded. Or have an externally funded research program, however they frame it. So I have a loan repayment program from NIH. I have a K award. I have multiple R21s. I have this R25 and R01. I'm a co-investigator on multiple different projects, and I've gotten funding from foundations like the American Diabetes Association, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. What's not on my shadow, my shadow CV is that my loan repayment renewal was not funded the first time. I had to come back in again. My KO1, I submitted it twice. I was told it would not be funded. This was during sequestration in 2011 when just the government was shutting down all the time. So in December, I'm told it's not going to be funded, and I'm trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do, because now I'm in my third year and this was the whole plan. It also helped that my mentor on the K told me that he'd never not had one get funded. So that was always great to feel. And my program officer called me in May, literally like a week after my son was born. He was born May 1st, to ask me if I could do it, but only in 4 years instead of the 5 I'd asked for. And I was like, oh, so. And it was a testament to the fact that he really believed in the project. He believed in me. And, he's like, look, you got caught at this very bad time. Like, it's not about the quality of the project, but it's about what's happening in Washington. So that was Mark Chavez. I'm incredibly grateful to him. I had a ADA grant that was not funded in 2016. The comments were all glowingly positive. I believe 2 of the reviewers said we should fund this, and it was still not funded. And I'm like, there's nothing, the PO called a couple months later to say they would fund it. So I've had multiple grants funded on second submissions. My RO1, it took to my 4th submission, and I have dozens of other applications that have not been submitted, and they're not listed anywhere on my CV. So that's my shadow CV. And then I want to turn kind of the last part of my talk to talk about hope. And by hope, I mean this acronym of harnessing in terms of, I share my shadow CV to show you the ways that which, if you just look at a CV, you are just seeing the numerator, you're just seeing the successes. And there is everyone has a shadow CV. Whether they're willing to tell you about it is a different question, right? But like everyone has one. There is no one who is just hit maker after hit maker after hit maker. So just sort of understand that. So let me tell you again, this idea about hope. So harnessing your strengths, being open, persisting, and encouraging others. By harnessing your strengths, what do I mean? I think one of the things that's been hard for me one of the lessons I'm glad to have learned, but it was difficult for me to learn, was the idea of being honest with myself about what things give me energy and what take it from me. Okay. So think about yourself, like what are things that it doesn't matter what time of day, if somebody asked you to do it, you could do it, or what are some things that when you start doing that, you lose time because you get so engrossed in it. And so you don't, so it doesn't really feel like work. So again, those are typically things that you feel confident doing, that bring you in contact with different people or settings, that get you excited about scholarship or teaching. All right. So note what those things are and try to build them into your day. Things that sap your energy are things that will make you question your abilities or feel incompetent, that require you to work with people that are disrespectful or lack direction or unsupportive, right? So, once you can if you could divide the world, your kind of work world, career, even beyond work, like career more broadly, into things that give you energy and sap energy, then I think you can kind of both begin to understand how do I get more in this bucket and less in this bucket. The other thing I think is important to understand is that nobody brings their best self to everything. So I bring my best self to generating ideas, collaborating, and communicating. Like, I love giving talks like this. If I could be like on a lecture circuit, I think it would be hilarious, right? I would have a great time. Where I bring my worst self is administration. It's hard to control the eye roll sometimes. I think sometimes it's really hard to give critical feedback to students and employees. And now my students and employees may not feel that way, but like, I don't enjoy doing it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, and I don't know how to do it in a way I'm learning how to make it as constructive as possible, because that is where it's coming from, is a point of wanting to be constructive. And I think it's hard to hire people. I don't quite know it's hard to kind of know what to look for, and how to supervise people in the way that helps them do their best work, and learning that the way I work is different than the way other people work. So there are things that, now that I've been able to kind of identify that now I can kind of lean into, okay, let me go get training on how do I supervise? Let me get training on administration, right? And I've been seeking out things for that. Now, you might not be able to do that on your own. So you can ask people you trust to help identify your strengths. You could also hire somebody. So I'm hiring a career consultant right now to help me plan for my sabbatical next year. Once you can identify those items that sap energy, figure out if there are ways you can delegate them. Okay, so because there are people for whom those things don't sap energy, right? That they do enjoy doing those things. I think also identifying partners, whether that's your fellow students, whether staff, people in your social network, even beyond the academy, who provide opportunities for you to flex and to build strengths. And then the last thing I want to say about this is time is zero sum. Energy does not have to be. There are situations where you can do an activity and it gives you more energy for the next thing you're heading into versus, okay, so kind of reflecting on that. Okay, the O is open, and by that I mean being open to opportunities. I am here to tell you that you all are small business owners. So I am the owner and sole proprietor of Briana Mezuk LLC, not literally, but yes. Okay, so by that I mean we are entrepreneurs, and an entrepreneur is somebody. This is the definition of an entrepreneur: is someone who creates a new business, bearing most of the risks. Right. So if my career doesn't go well, my grants don't get funded, who gets the blame? Me, right? But also enjoying most of the rewards. The entrepreneur is obviously seen as an innovator, a source of new ideas, goods, services, businesses, and procedures. So this is, if you think about even within CSEF, so we have all these faculty and students and staff within CSEF, but any one person's success has very little to do with other person's success outside of their kind of small business. So like the Nancy Fleischer LLC success, while it's great for all of CSEF, the real benefits are coming to Nancy. And also, if Nancy Fleischer LLC runs into a rough period, the rest of us are like, sorry about that, but it wouldn't necessarily, which everybody will, right? So everybody does run it, but I'm trying to say, like, the outcomes are not positively correlated necessarily, right? Or think about, any block in Ann Arbor where like businesses come and go, right? Like the correlation of any, it's just like sometimes people don't want cookies or something. I don't know. Anyway, so how this applies here. So especially if you're thinking about ever going on the academic job market, search committees say they are looking for innovative researchers that fill niche roles. That is, they want something sort of unique and special versus someone who is sort of like a generic researcher that can fill many different roles, right? And that's similar to an entrepreneurship, right? People don't want just like a better way to slice bread. They want like artisanal bread that can right? And the second way this is true is that at the beginning of your career, you will fill every role in your small business. So in Briana Mezuk LLC, I answer the phones, I deal with financing, I pay the bills, I hire people, I supervise people, right? Like I do everything at the beginning. For your first grant, you will be doing everything on it, okay? And that's true of entrepreneurs too. Like when people kind of start career or start businesses in their basements or whatever, like that's the same thing. But again, most directly, like I said earlier, the success or failure of your departmental coworkers is largely unrelated or certainly not considered part of your evaluation of your success and failure. And as a result, that can make this job very lonely because it's different than if you like, for example, I have a friend who works at Kellogg and she works at a team that's marketing Pringles. And so all of the people, if Pringles sells more, everyone on the team does well. And if Pringles sells less, everybody on the team does less well, right? And so it's not any one person's job to sell Pringles, it's the whole team's job to sell Pringles. And that's how most jobs are actually. So, you know, but except for this job. So the other thing is that you, again, to the point of you have these 3 challenges. So you need to overcome bureaucracy. And so that means learning how to say no and also learning how to say not right now. A mental hack that Kate Bauer, who's faculty over in nutrition, gave me when I asked her, I'd been asked to serve on a committee that it was going to be in person over Halloween. And my son was like 7 or 8 at the time. And I'm like, oh God, like I don't want, he's not going to dress up for Halloween all that often. I want to, you know, I want to be there for this. I told you earlier, I had cancer, like, you know, this is these things. And she said to me, so anyway, so I'm really torn because it's been great for me to be on this committee, but on the other hand, the timing of it was bad. And she says, well, what makes you think you're the first person they asked? And I'm like, of course I'm the first person they asked. I'm amazing. How good. She's like, are you sure that you're the first person they asked? And then she's like, just give him another name. And sure enough, I told him, I'm sorry, like the time doesn't work for me, but here's another person. I gave him the name of another former doctoral. He did it. He did great. It was great. It was like, what a hack for me, at least as a mild narcissist, you know, to like say like, oh, maybe that wasn't the first. They're not the first choice. You got to learn how to delegate. And you got to learn how to schedule your time. And by that, it's both time and energy. You need to hire talented people. That is your students, that's your postdoctoral fellows, that's your research staff, and you need to obtain financing. Again, in our world, that's typically contracts and grants. You also would benefit, I think we all benefit by having an entrepreneurial mindset. And by that, I mean asking a lot of questions, approach your field with a critical eye. You know, I don't think that, you know, things, you know, like the amazing technological advances that we all carry with us every day would have been created if people had been like, isn't the world great now? And like, isn't everything just as good as it could be? Right? No, of course not. It's always like, well, what are the unstated assumptions? What are the limitations? In what ways could we, you know, is this world, this thing incomplete? What type of information will we need? Right? So approaching the field with a critical eye, I think is again, a part of an entrepreneurial mindset. I think brainstorming is a very big part of your job. It's something I really enjoy doing. If you've ever taken a class with me, you'll know that I ask my first 2 things I ask students to do are like come up with a list of topics they're interested in and like concept map out one of those things. And part of that is just like visualize your idea. Let me understand what you're thinking. Use it as a way to then, before you start writing anything down, before you actually kind of get anxious about having to delete paragraphs and delete sentences, because that's what people like me tell you to do when you're a professor and you're working on a paper. Just like talk to me about the idea. I think that's a very entrepreneurial type of thing to do. The idea that good ideas can come from anywhere. I listen to a lot of podcasts that have absolutely nothing to do with work in public health, and that I get a lot of good ideas. I read a lot of books outside my field too, and I think those are things that really just both give me energy, but also help me sort of like keep my mind flexible. And then also the sort of just like understand that nobody cares about the success of your small business as much as you do. Nobody. Your boss doesn't, your chair doesn't, your field doesn't, nobody. So that means when you are asked to do you're going to be asked to do lots of different things that are not directly supporting your development of your small business. You're going to be asked to do new teaching, new administration, new committees. And as much as possible, you need to manage that and understand that because time is limited, time that you put over here is not, unless you can figure out a way to make it feed into your small business. These are nobody else has got the same priorities that you do. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. So they have a different set of priorities. And so understanding that and is not about, you do want to be a good coworker, you do want to be a good collaborator, you do want to do, help out with, I'm not saying that, but you need to sort of just understand that I've seen lots of people early in their career get to a point where they're on 5 or 6 committees very early on, or they're doing a lot of teaching very early on. And they're like, I don't have time or energy for research. And I'm like, well, this job is not going to go well if we don't figure out a way to recalibrate, because they're getting all their needs met and you're not getting your needs met. Okay, the P is persist. So again, I think as I started off this talk, your greatest skill, you may not realize it or you may not call it a skill, but it is literally, your greatest skill is your ability to learn from experience. And that I mean both learning from rejection and failure. That is your most valuable asset. Now, that doesn't mean it's not painful. So one way to think about it is to adjust your expectations. So I've already told you that rejection is inevitable. The title of this course is dealing with the inevitable. You will be rejected. You will apply for things and not get them. Other people will apply for the same things and they will get them. And you will feel jealous and you will feel inadequate. All of these things will happen. So, so knowing that, I guess the other thing is to understand that the ratio of failure to success is going to get closer to 1, but it's never going to get to 1. So today in my career, I would say that I get rejections about 2 to 5 times more often than any time I get a success. At the beginning of my career is easily 10 times as often. Part of this is because I have a better understanding of what I'm trying to do now. I should be better in some ways, right? But then, you know, it's also the case that even when you are sort of like ostensibly externally successful, you still continue to get rejected. I want to acknowledge that it doesn't, while feedback is not easy to hear, it is 24 karat gold. I tell all of my students, if I'm giving you feedback on a piece of paper, what that means is I have literally like blocked off probably 3 hours of my day to read every word that you've read. And I'm gonna give you comments on all these different things. I'm gonna give you comments on the structure, on the wording, etc. And that is because I care about you. That is why I'm doing that. If I don't care how you're learning or about your project or about it, like I will just say, look, looks good and move on, right? So like I need you to kind of understand that it's, if you can, you need to ask for feedback and then thank people when they give that to you, because that really is the element of it's necessary. You also need to, because rejection is inevitable, you cannot sit around waiting for it, but you need to have multiple pots on the stove. So like typically in my my life now, I'll have 1 to 2 manuscripts under review at any one time. I'll have 1 to 2 lead authors papers that are being finalized for submission, and maybe a couple others that are sort of in analysis phase. And so knowing that, you know, it feels good to get something out the door, but you must continue to work because you don't know when those rejections are going to happen, just that they are going to happen. When you believe in something, don't take no for an answer. Like be willing to compromise. What is it about this project that the funder is not interested in? What more information do they need? But if I've had like 3 ideas in my whole career, really like 3 genuine ideas. And what I do is build different projects that help me learn about different pieces of those ideas over and over and over again. But those are things I believe in and I can always bring energy to learn from. But if I had sort of submitted my first grant and just said, and they said no, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's not a good idea. I guess I'll move on. No, like, I mean, I don't know where I'd be studying. Who knows what I'd be studying? I encourage you to map it out. I think you may have heard that, you know, the idea of taking like a Sunday evening or a Monday morning meeting to just kind of check in, like literally schedule it on your calendar and just like check in. What am I doing this week? What activities went well last week? What are my short-term goals? What are my long-term goals? Literally take time to do this. You should give the best hours of your day to yourself and to your family. This is not easy to do at all times of the year, right? When finals are happening, that's a hard thing to do. When grants are due, that's a hard thing to do. But knowing that there are going to be these compressed periods, the rest of the time, giving your best hours of your day to yourself and to your writing, or sorry, to yourself, and by that I mean you should be writing or working on your projects or thinking about your research and your family. I encourage people to take time for mental breaks and then always celebrate big successes when they happen, and even sometimes the small ones. And then finally, my E is to encourage others. And so you cannot do it alone. It cannot be done alone. Okay, so maybe that's a little bit, not that you can't, it cannot be done alone. And even if it could be done alone, it would not be as fun. This job is a lot of fun. Working with students is a lot of fun. Talking about research ideas, talking about the world is a lot of fun. And you need other people to do that. So really encouraging others. And so I want to encourage you to develop a differentiated kind of support network. So there's people that you've probably heard about, like collaborators, right? So these are projects maybe that you need some of their advice on a specific piece. But then there are projects where like you both have like sort of different, like that are more kind of collaboratively driven. You sort of have, you each have a different idea and you're bringing it together to kind of synthesize it in a project. Those are different types of projects, okay? But you need collaborators, you need mentors, both inside your department and your institution, but also outside, because you need somebody who sort of isn't in the same soup that you're in to kind of give you some perspective. You need sponsors. Sponsors are senior people that can kind of like make a connection for you. If you need, you're like, hey, do you know this person? I'd like to meet them. They can provide guidance on like a sticky HR issue. So when I was at VCU, I was in the Department of Family Medicine and Population Health. For my K award, my mentor was in the Department of Psychiatry. And so if my chair of my home department was asking me to do something, I would tell my mentor on my K and say, I don't really want to do this thing. Can you tell my department chair that I need to focus more on my research? And he would do that, right? And vice versa. If my mentor was asking me to do something and I felt, I don't really, that's not the direction I want to go. Can you help me broker these things, right? So I think those things are helpful. And they can also recommend you for awards, because that is something that's like a nice, you're not being narcissistic in saying like, hey, I saw this award. I was wondering if you could nominate me for it, because I think it would help me sort of, it will help your career, like, right. And other people are doing that. So get over yourself and just ask like, hey, I thought this would be nice. I also think, and this is my favorite types of people, are kindred spirits. So these are people who I think are creative, energy providing people that I talk about ideas, but I generally don't write with, like even if they're in the same field, like we just kind of chat about the world or talk about different papers, but we're not actually like working together. And in some ways, I think it's good that we're not working together, writing together, because that's this kind of collaborative relationship where now it's got a different type of functionality. So I think kind of labeling that group of people, these kindred spirits, as an important part of your network, your professional network, is helpful. And then finally, I don't know anybody who doesn't have some hired help. And that might be somebody who helps clean your house, somebody who helps train you, somebody who sticks needles into you, somebody who you talk to, right? I mean, I really don't know anybody in the field who has not at some point used professional services to help with their well-being. Be the type of colleague you wish others would be. That means, for me, that means making connections for students and colleagues. So a lot of times I'll write an email that says, making a connection. And it's like, hi, so-and-so, I hope you're doing well. I'd like you to meet so-and-so. They're interested in X. Could you please have some time to talk to them? Be curious about people and ask questions. Check in about non-work things in their lives. I think that's a very helpful thing to do. Something that's been harder to do with COVID. Be honest with yourself and everyone else about your imposter syndrome and kind of support people working through it. Everybody has it. Nobody thinks they're smart enough to be here. Share your materials, like your code, your grants, your CV, your promotion statements, whatever you have. But I will say the caveat is I share all of these things when asked, but I ask people not to share them with anyone else. And if someone else would like to see my stuff, they need to contact me, because I want to have control over where that information goes. I had an experience very early in my career where I learned that somebody had sent a grant out to other people that I had sent to them. And they're like, oh yeah, I read your grant. I'm like, who are you? Like I didn't know who they were. And like, it's just, don't do that. Never send out any, like you need to, and you shouldn't ask them for permission. Hey, can I give this to my friend? You tell your friend, you want Bree's grant? Here's Bree's email. Help yourself. Right. And that's because they should have to do some work to get out. I'll tell you, writing a grant's a hell of a lot of work. So I'm almost done. So now I started with what was your most recent professional rejection. Now I want to know what your most recent small success was. So what we call these in my lab small wins. So this might be, I'll give you some examples. I got an IRB submitted, not done, just submitted. I got a paper submitted. I finally got SAS to do something. I made R make a picture. So what were your small wins? Tell me about let's share our small wins, the most recent small wins.
Yeah, just
please.
Submitted a very annoying grant administration thing.
Yes.
Center.
Yes, wonderful.
Yes.
That is
So
fantastic.
nice.
Yes, that is a great small win. Yes, John, you have one? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought your hand was there another hand? The voluntary small win? Yes, please.
I just finished 2 abstract that both submission deadline first 2 weeks of January, although I haven't submitted, I just finished. the
Yeah,
draft.
no, that's good. Yes, that's a great small win. Got the draft done. Other small wins? Yes.
I just got a paper under review. That's the first aim of my dissertation. That's only 2 years late. So.
That's one, I never said in my third aim, so I think that's wonderful. Never did it, never published my third paper. Yeah. Put that on my shadow CV. My dissertation never saw the light of day. Other small wins? I know some good stuff's happening. Come on. Yes.
Yeah, just submit our application.
Yes, that's wonderful. Maybe you went to a class and like the professor was good. You know, like that. That's a small win. Did you get through a paper that you've been meaning to read? Did you kind of get sassed to do something? These are the types of, you got to celebrate them. You know what I'm saying? You got to call them out what they are and just sort of understand that like, these are even though they feel small, they are all building towards this process which you're doing, which if you haven't figured out by now is a marathon. Okay, so this is a picture of me after I ran my first half marathon. I haven't run a full marathon yet. That's the goal. I've run 2 halves though, so I'm going to consider myself sort of like partially meeting my goal. But the sign says run to say F you to cancer and never come back that my son made for me after mine. So, and I should say like, I'd never run more than a mile since high school before I got, I'm not kidding, like before I got sick. And running for me has become a place that I can, you know, both make peace with my body, which, you know, tried to kill me. And also just if somebody had told me how good I was going to feel mentally from exercising, instead of like making me feel completely inadequate every time I tried to do something, I think I would have had a very different 20s and 30s, you know, period in my life. So, yeah, so I think that, and I share this as here. Again, I'll share these slides in the, with everybody afterwards. Again, these are some resources. These are 3 podcasts that I really like. How's Work is a podcast by a woman named Esther Perel, who is actually a psychoanalyst who normally does, or she does, not normally, but she does couples like therapy. And these are recorded sessions, not of couples therapy, but she has that podcast called Where Should We Begin? But this one is of people who work together and they're dealing with like a work conflict. And it's a really, you know, the idea that like you bring your external issues into work or your work issues and go home. So I love this. How I built this is a podcast by Guy Raz, where he interviews different entrepreneurs. And On Being is about all the existential questions. It's a really beautiful description of poetry, music, art, just different types of interviews. So I encourage all of that. And this is my last slide. This was taken at, for those of you who know about Grand Rapids has this outdoor art exhibit called Art Prize every couple of years. This is, I'm a big fan of Peanuts, and they had this out. And this picture was taken about a week before I had my first cancer surgery. And so I like it for all of those reasons. So I know I didn't leave quite as much time as I wanted to, but I left a few minutes for questions.
Right, I actually, I have a question. I'm not sure whether you have already touched on it a little bit. Actually, wanted to know when is the time you feel that really an academic career is a good fit for you, and you didn't want to find any other thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for those on Zoom, the question is, when did I feel like an academic career was the best career for me? So I wanted to become a professor because I had a really incredible instructor. An instructor taught my intro to neuroscience course, and it was the best to this day. It's the best class I've ever taken in my life. It's just incredible. And I'm like, well, I want to be a professor. And I guess I have to go get a PhD because he has, like, literally, this was the thought process. So I'm very thankful to have that as my job. I will say, the more I'm in this job, I am starting to think this is not the job I want forever. So I think that things change over time. I think it's impossible to know what your really what a job is day to day with it. I mean, I think if you think it's something you want to try, I think you should try it. And I think that there's lots of paths in and out. So I have a good friend who's, you know, did a had worked at Rand for the last 15 years, never been in an academic job, and now is going to Emory. You know, so she's doing research, but was in like this, and Rand is a research kind of think tank type thing. You know, but she was worried. She's like, how am I going to deal with students? How, like, that's not really been part of my job, but she wanted that to, she sort of was done with this career and was ready for another one. So, I mean, I don't know how the other faculty in the room feel, but like, I don't think you ever know. I think sort of like fully understanding that like, there are opportunities that come up that, you know, make things feel good, and you should pursue those and lean into those. I think the only other thing I would say is sometimes the job is the problem and sometimes the place that is the problem. And so I've mentored people through the MeWe program that were in terrible places and they needed to leave those places. They were in places that were not supportive, that there's none of the things I encourage you to have here. And so they saw that as a sign that they were wrong for the job. And I'm like, I don't know that the job is not right for anyone. This is a bad place. You need to get to a different place. And then if you still feel that way, then maybe this is not the right job. You know, so leaving on your own terms, you know, I think that's a good question. John or Nancy, do you have thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my mantra recently is some things you just have to experience for yourself to understand. Like I've been saying this a lot recently,
Yeah.
but like, I think professorhood is one of them. Like, if you think you might want to do it, then you should try it and, you know, see if you like it. I mean, I kind of had an opposite experience where I had done public health work before my PhD, and I thought that that's what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And so I went to the CDC for 2 years after my PhD, and I was like, I cannot work in this environment.
Mhm,
I need to go back to academia.
Mhm.
And so that's what I did. And I'm much happier here.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Yeah, I always felt ill suited for another job, honestly. And I do kind of encourage people like to explore the breadth of paths that actually interest you. Like personally for me, it was like, this was just kind of the way to go for whatever set of reasons. But I think if there are multiple things that interest you, that's, you know, I think we do a better job than some school departments in terms of emphasizing the range of careers that are available to you. But coming up, I did my PhD in sociology, and it was like just like, and it's like, that's great if that's what you want to do, but I think it's that openness will either take you to where you want to be, or if this is where it is, then you get back there.
And I would say the other thing is like understanding like the elements, there's like the title, but then there's like the way that the job is structured. So no one tells me what to do. No. I mean, like my boss asked me, are you free for a meeting? You know, that doesn't happen in 99% of jobs, right? Instead, the boss is like, we're meeting now. Wednesday, clear your calendar, you know, like that's not, but as a result, that means I can work every hour of every day. And nobody's going to tell me not to do that, you know. I can pursue I can do things that are not productive, right? So I think, but for me, like whatever job, if I ever leave the academy, I will want a job. That's something I really value, is having full control over like how I spend my time at work. And so whatever job it would be, I'd want something that gave me that. And that's sort of an element that I hadn't even remotely considered when I'm like, I want to be a professor. But the idea that like, oh, I'm really going to have like full control over how I spend my time at work. Like, wow, what a gift it really is. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah, Karen.
I really appreciate this talk. So like, how do you think about, so for example, like I think like folks who are occupying sort of marginalized positions in the academy, like get asked to do a
Yes.
lot of things. And so I was sort of like a couple times over this past semester, I felt conflicted, like, is this me getting put on a diversity poster, or am I creating propaganda for an institution that has a $17 billion endowment? It doesn't mean we need to be doing those things. And so like, the entrepreneurial mindset would tell me like, yes, do that, get your name out there, blah, blah, blah. And then I like always report back, like, is this sort of like violating whatever principles I have? So like, how do you sort of measure or reflect on like, what extent maybe is it corrupting or those sorts of things?
Yeah, I mean, and I think, I guess another way to think about it is like, are you doing work because it will be splashy or like get accepted or, you know, whatever, or are you doing the work that actually matters to you, that's harder and that people don't get? I mean, I would say to respond to your question directly, I mean, I think you can take the entrepreneurial mindset to it in the sense of say like, thank you for this invitation to appear on this. I just am curious who else you're asking to be on this poster. What was it about my experience or my work that made you want to, highlight me? Because I, as you are probably aware, like people who are in marginalized situations are far more likely to show up on these kind of recruitment materials. And I'm sure that's not what you were intending, but I'd like to just kind of get a better understanding. When you could really sort of use it almost as, I don't want to say like a teachable moment for them, because I don't know what they'll learn from it, but sort of staying true to what you are caring about and sort of like getting, and I mean, I think that's one thing, I also think that there is an element of playing the long game. And so I think but you need to sort of help both like sort of keep that in mind and I guess another is to keep that in mind. And I had one other piece of information or this suggestion that a former mentor had given me, which was, write one for them and write one for you. So there's a whole other line of my work on debate. Like I do a lot of work with the National Association for Urban Debate Leagues. Nobody here knows anything about that work, but I just literally got a 25-year award from the National Association for Urban Debate Leagues, like just celebrating the work, the research I did. Nobody here knows about any of that, but like I do that work because that's for me. Like that's stuff that I care about. And like this university, this institution has no way to understand why that's important to me. And so I just try to make time for that while also making sure that I do the things that they are needing me to do and they are making those expectations. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, we are at time, so I will stay for a few minutes for questions, but thank you so much for your attention. Hopefully this was helpful. Oh, good. Thanks, Alejandro. I'm glad you could join.
Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you very much for making it available via Zoom. I've learned a lot, to be honest.
Thank you so much.
It has been wonderful, and greetings to all over there in Michigan.
Thank you. Alejandro's a new staffer working with my group that's in Puerto Rico. So we haven't met in person yet, but I'm going down for a meeting in March, so it'll be good. All right. Bye, everyone.